Welcome, everybody. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Thank y'all for joining me. Tonight is our first Mental Health Mondays. For those of you who do not know, welcome to the Coco Wells platform. Coco Wells is a wellness platform where we create health and wellness education events, and we also create plant-based beauty products. So thank you guys for joining us tonight. We're super excited. We have some special guests for you guys, but let's just get right into it. So I really want to share the importance of, why we're doing this and why we decided to add this series to our brand. Not only is this month Minority Mental Health Awareness Month, but we know that there are some startling statistics around mental health awareness as it relates to the African American community. And so I just went and found 3 very simple ones, some things that I know that some of us may be familiar with, to go ahead and share with you guys. So it says only 1 in 3 African Americans who need mental health care receive it. And so this could be based on a variety of reasons: affordability, access, education, and awareness. Our second stat is compared with the general population, African Americans are less likely to be offered either evidence-based medication therapy or psychotherapy. So oftentimes when African Americans are receiving some type of care, they are not getting the level of care that they need, based on some very stereotypical notions that Black people, that we go into the medical facilities and we're faking, or we can experience a high tolerance of pain, and a lot of different things that have been embedded into the healthcare system around some microaggressions as it relates to African Americans. Black people with mental health conditions, particularly schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and other psychosis, are more likely to be incarcerated than people of other races. And so we see this happen often. We know that other races, they can go in and they can deem themselves mentally unstable after they've committed different levels of crimes. However, when it comes to African Americans and minorities, crimes that happen, they do not get the same type of assistance and true health and awareness and education around what we're experiencing in our communities as well. So that's why we found it very important to add this series to our brand. As we continue to talk about health and wellness, we really want to start with some things that we see plaguing our community. We've seen it recently with Kanye West, a lot of different celebrities, and just everyday people. So we gathered up some different healthcare professionals that are going to join us tonight. As I shared on my Facebook page, we're going to be doing this once a month on the last Monday of every month. So we hope that you just continue to join in, provide feedback, give us some feedback in the comments. Feel free to ask questions. If you don't feel comfortable asking the questions on screen, we totally understand, but definitely we want to see some participation in this dialogue. So yes. Let me get back to me. Another thing that I do want to add, for those of you who are familiar with the brand, this was a t-shirt or sweatshirt that we created to raise awareness. So having fun merchandise helps us normalize the conversation around therapy and mental health. We have less than 10 of these left, so I'm going to put the link in the comments. So if you would like to purchase, you can purchase, or you can visit our website, cocowells.com, to purchase this tonight. And things like that, continuing to support the brand and purchase merchandise and things that we create around the brand, really helps us fuel this movement. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and start introducing our guest. Our first guest is Devonna Gilmore. Devonna is a qualified mental health professional who is passionate about mental health education and advocacy. She advocates for those living with mental illness and motivates through sharing her own personal health journey. Hey, Devonna.
Hey, y'all. I'm so excited.
Our next Thank you. Our next panelist is Erica Bryant. Erica is a graduate from Prairie View A&M University, where she obtained her Bachelor's of Science in Human Performance. She then embarked on her graduate journey, receiving her MS in Occupational Therapy from the prestigious HU. Erica has enjoyed life as a traveling occupational therapist for the past 2 years and has currently transitioned to a psychiatric occupational therapist. She is the founder and CEO of her own private practice, I Am, I Can, I Will, a mental health consulting and therapy service with the mission to serve and educate the community about the importance of making your health a priority. Hey, Erica.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. And last but not least, Megan Howard is a licensed professional counselor licensed in the state of Texas. She's a graduate of Prairie View A&M University and the University of Houston Clear Lake. Megan has a genuine passion for helping others and helping them discover their inner power. She is the owner of her private practice, The Lotus Mind, that specializes in treating depression, anxiety, and life transitions beginning at age 12. Her goal is to assist clients in reblooming without the weight of their past. Hey, Megan.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Megan.
Guys, these are our guests. Not only are all of tonight's panelists graduates from Prairie View A&M University, I'm privileged of calling them my sisters, my sorors. They are Deltas, but they're not regular old Deltas. These are I'm so proud. My sisters and my neos, and I'm super excited about tonight's conversation. And I know that you guys are going to leave here full after you hear everything that they have to say. Yes. So I'm going to put you guys up. There y'all go. Y'all got all y'all credentials and stuff. So everybody. We're going to cover some real quick house rules, our house rule. This content is not intended to be a substitute for professional diagnosis or treatment. If you are experiencing any signs of depression, mental illness, or would like to further the conversation, please seek help from a professional mental health provider. So throughout this conversation, we are going to share some resources on the screen for those who would like to seek additional help, or for those who may be experiencing a crisis. So I just want to make sure that we share that because these are professionals and we don't want to jeopardize their practice. However, they are going to share some great resources on some next steps after tonight. What's up, y'all?
First of all, your introduction was great. I was like, that was great. You know, the visuals, everything, the content from the stats, it was all great. Very welcoming. I'm excited.
Thank you. Thank you.
Happy Monday.
Right.
Yes, happy Monday.
So y'all, when we did our run through, we were all like so excited that we kind of had the event without y'all a little bit.
Right.
So we went through some key topics that we wanted to make sure we discussed, especially in first time conversations. And so I want to start by asking each panelist, how do you define mental health and what does self-care and mental wellness mean to you? And we can start with Megan.
Mental health to me is a parallel between physical health. So a lot of times we separate mental health and physical health, but they both run together. Mental health is a spectrum. So a lot of times people might say, well, I don't have mental health. No, we all have mental health, but it's a matter of determining where you are within that spectrum. So maybe your mental health is in good condition. And in that case, it still requires work to maintain where you are. Perhaps you're in the middle, you're not doing bad, so you're working to not go backwards, but you're also putting in work to go forward. And then maybe you're on the end of the spectrum, and so you're having to do that work to improve. So we all have a level of mental health. It's just about determining where we are within that spectrum. As far as self-care, I would say self-care is putting yourself first, making yourself a priority. If that means taking a day to yourself, or that means that you are going to therapy to talk about things that are going on in life or things that you've experienced in the past, doing what you need to do that day to get through the day, but making yourself a priority and doing whatever it takes to do so.
That was awesome. Let's hear from Devonna.
Very well said, Megan.
Thank
To
you.
me, mental health is just making yourself a priority as well, and just always thinking about how things affect you. So me personally, before I was diagnosed with mental illness, I didn't really understand that so many things have an effect on your mental health, and just to treat it the same way you would treat your physical health. So if you're not feeling yourself, if you're not feeling good, making sure that you are seeking help for those things. Just making that a priority in everything that you do. And if you notice something is off, just checking in with yourself. And then self care is kind of like exactly what Megan said, putting yourself first, making yourself a priority, doing the things that you need to do. If you need to take a break, take a break. If you need to talk to someone, talk to someone. Sometimes you just need to do a self evaluation and figure out what you really need, because your body will tell you.
That is great. Thank you, Devonna. Now, Erica.
I agree with all you ladies, especially to piggyback off of what Megan said as well. Is that mental health to me? I look at it in more of a holistic approach. It's in the same alignment as physical health. It's kind of a gauge of where am I at mentally, and that can be like emotional, that can be spiritual, and it can even be secondary physical. One thing I learned in practice is that a lot of the physical illness that we have, or a lot of the physical distress we go through, the primary or the root of the issue has to be some form of, or it's typically some form of mental neglect, whether it's stress, whether it's whatever that compulsive thing may be mentally, tends to transpire physically. So you can't treat one without the other. They both should be, coincide. So if I give out a plan for mental health, and it may have an exercise plan on there, may have a diet plan, may have an art plan. So it's a holistic part of treatment when we talk about occupational therapy. And then when it comes to self-care, one of the self-care is basically care for self. And I think, like you guys said, making yourself priority. But another part that I learned from a fellow clinician is self-care can also be ugly. Sometimes you have to kind of strip yourself down and get to that vulnerable level so you can build your self back up. So sometimes self-care is not always like, roses and flowers. Sometimes it's brutal honesty in order to get to the level that you need to thrive.
Thank you, Erica. And I'm so glad that you said it's not always roses and flowers part, because I think that it kind of speaks to what sets Coco Wells apart. I know that when we originally started creating products, people were really focused on like, oh, like, what do you have that does this? Or what do you have that makes my skin look like this? But I really wanted to truly get us to a space where not only do we have our own external products for things, but we also have a space to address those internal issues as well. So it's not always about, like looking pretty or like putting a Band-Aid on something or fixing something, but addressing those root issues that are causing it. When we talk about mental health, there are so many internal causes, whether it's our diet, our environment, anything,
emotions,
mindset, all of these different
childhood traumas.
Exactly. So I want to, you guys have a lot of, fans out there. So I'm going to share some comments so that y'all can see. Everybody is really, really, really excited. I want to see what everybody is saying. Because
we're so excited too, like seriously. I remember when you came with us with an idea, right? It was like, a month ago? And we was like, we didn't have a date, we didn't have a time, we didn't have a place. It was like, we just know we have to get on the
platform for it.
Have to have the conversation.
What was going on? Like something was happening, and then Megan was like, I really wish that there was a space that we could like do this. And I text her and I'm like, I'm about to launch my brand. Like, let's do it. Like, we gonna do it. Y'all just give me a second.
Right. Exactly. The emails will come rolling. Just know it's happening. And look at it now.
And I feel like it's needed now more than ever.
Absolutely. I wanted to piggyback off of what Erica said about it being ugly and having those ugly moments. I think that really coincides with where we are right now as a world, and not just a nation, but a world with this quarantine. Quarantine has caused us to be alone. And a lot of times when we focus on self-care is also being able to spend that time alone. And that's what we're forced to do right now. But spending that time alone can be so uncomfortable because you're forced to sit alone with yourself, with your thoughts. And those thoughts may not always be the best because you know your flaws, you know what you've done that nobody else has done. And at the end of the day, you're stuck with you. So this time has caused all of us to start looking internally, whether we wanted to or not. And so I really like that she said that it's not always pretty, because it's not.
Self accountability.
Yes.
Sure.
Like, it's not always them. It's you too, sis. It's
Right. Like she said, this is a global pandemic. This is affecting everyone. So from the highest to the lowest to the, the farthest to the nearest. So therefore, you have to it kind of subjected us to being alone in a sense to where we don't have all those other distractions that can probably fill voids that, kept us fueled and kept us running. So now we're actually in the house sitting with ourselves. And at some point I had to ask myself, when I tell myself I'm bored or I'm not happy because I'm just here by myself, and I have to ask myself, those revalidation questions like, you have all these goals, so why are you bored? Or you're blessed in this aspect, so why are you feeling like you're bored and grateful? Because those thoughts do come, especially when you're alone in those, dark times or in those alone times. Because in therapy, we tell people, don't isolate yourself. Go talk to friends, go talk to family, go hang, do this.
Socialize.
Now my whole training from therapy, how to tell someone to run out of depression. I'm kind of telling them to, you kind of got to sit here, but you have to create while you're here, So it's kind of definitely tailored the way I've actually been, been kind of given, putting out therapy as well. And also for myself too, because I'm not used to being confined. So I realized all those things validations. I'm like, Erica, no, you need to be able to be validated even if you have to sit in the house 24/7. It's not that
right.
These are those things, like you have to find solace within yourself first. So
I agree. And I don't think I realized like how touch and go life is with like some of the things that we do that we don't think are problematic, because it's like we're only doing it like in the moment. And you're like sitting in one place doing it, and you're like, what is wrong with
you? Right. You really have time to break things down and analyze them and be like, wait a minute, do I really need to be doing this?
Like, you're doing a lot, so you're doing way too much.
Way too much.
I had to learn the thin line for being productive and then being effective, because I was productive. I like that. 8 to 8, you couldn't catch me, but but most of it was fillers.
Doing nothing.
I really realized how much time I spent doing nothing during my day, because it's like now you're at home, so it's like you thought you had to be at work all that time, but did you really? Or were you really being as productive as you could be when you were at work?
Exactly. I definitely agree. So we're talking about the quarantine, and we're talking about how the quarantine has brought some different things to light. We know very recently, I do want to touch on this because pop culture and, like music culture in general, it has a huge influence in our community. So we know recently we see Kanye, I want to make sure I'm using the correct term. We see Kanye's mental health disabilities or just uncomfortable moments kind of come to the surface in front of us. Some things that we may have seen before, just very sporadically, but because we're all sitting at home in front of the TV and we're all witnessing it at the same time, it looks a lot more alarming than what we're used to seeing and kind of just brushing off. So let's talk about some stigmas around mental health and mental illness.
Yeah. You gotta get started. So some of the stigmas, like what are some of the stigmas that you guys hear in your practice, or the stigmas that people give you, or when you tell them about therapy, it's too expensive, or it's for crazy people, or
I'm not crazy.
The crazy is a big one.
Crazy is the biggest one, or they don't want people to think that they're crazy.
Or people
not wanting to let anybody else know what's going on.
Open.
What goes on in this house stays in this house type of mentality. It's nobody else's business what I go through.
Just pray about it.
Just pray about it.
Just pray.
Right.
Just pray.
So there's a lot of stigmas leading for people to find a way out of not going to therapy, or a reason to not receive therapy or inquire about therapy. But I think what I tell most people that I talk to when it comes to therapy, you don't have to, not that you don't have to have a reason to talk or approach therapy, because I feel like we all have a reason, whether we are conscious about it or not. But really, therapy, you're the driver and the facilitator in treatment. Well, you should be, right? because this is supposed to be a non-biased, this is supposed to be a judge-free zone. So you never want to, and that's why you have to do your research when it comes to therapists. You have to figure out what type of therapy or what therapist best works for you, because some of these stigmas can become a reality if you are in line with the wrong therapist. So you can go to a therapist and may well make you feel like you're crazy when you know you're not. They may well make it seem unaffordable when you can probably go down the street to somebody who's affordable. So these stigmas can be a reality if you're not doing the proper work, prior to going to therapy. When you are asked if they will do a screen for you prior to doing the first session, ask all the questions you need to ask. Like, this is your service. We're just a provider. So make sure that, you are feeling, and understand if it's your first time. We were talking about that earlier. It may seem foreign, so you may not feel 100% after the screen, but if you feel enough that you're in that green zone, that 80% to 100% that this can work, then this should be a low risk towards your mental health. And also, it's not a long time. It's not a contract commitment. Like, if you you like this is sending me backwards, then yeah, by all means, you can stop at any point. So that's my take on stigmas.
What y'all think about this stigma someone shared? It's not for Black people. That therapy is not for Black people. And I know I've heard that, and I'm sure.
Right.
I can see that.
The session.
Say it again.
She said you need to guide the session. I think she was kind of piggybacking off of what you were saying about being a survivor and like.
See that?
Yeah, we facilitate and we modulate and things like that. But when it comes to the actual topics and the meat and the bread of the therapy session, I don't know what to say. Everything I have to add to me is coming from you. So it's whatever you give me, you tell me. It's anything else, I'm telling you. And I'm not a teacher or anything like that. I'm not here to tell you what to do, how to do, when to do it. So I'm not even forceful in that way. So therapy, but it's not being for Black people. I think that comes with what Deb said with tradition. Like when you've been raised in a household that they teaches us what happens in this house stays in this house. Don't tell our business, and those type of confined, those constricted type of homes. Then of course, and later on, that becomes controlling or an aspect in our life that literally we don't air out our dirty laundry. And usually when you go to therapy, you start airing out some things about yourself, about family, about friends, about relationships. And then it goes back to, that's why I said what happens in this house stays in the house.
Or it can be from past experiences too. I've seen that people are hesitant because they've seen how family members that do have mental illnesses have been treated. So, they have that uncle who, may have been schizophrenic and just kept in the back room. And it's like, well, I don't want to end up like him. So I'm going to make sure that y'all don't think I'm crazy. So I'm not going to go to therapy.
Yeah. I have an uncle too who abused the system, who said it was crazy so he could get some medicine. So it's definitely, and then also the misdiagnosed people, they tend to misdiagnose. In the past, in the beginning, you had to understand, before mental health was even a thing, a tag word, something people do, you had psychiatric wards. So understand when you saw people in the white coats, there wasn't a mental health center. If you were mentally disordered or intellectually delayed or anything like that, they stuck you in those type of holes and there was no treatment. Now that was in the 60s, 70s, 80s. That was recent, So when people think of mental health, they think you can lock me up in the psych ward, give me some medicine, control me, and those things. But mental health has evolved now, where we have actual treatment going on instead of just confinement and sustainability. So I think a lot of times, like especially for the older people, when they think of therapy or going to a mental health hospital, doing those things, they automatically probably have that preconceived notion of like, this is a psych ward. And you do have some people who need that severe level, but it's not always the case.
Right.
So before I do want us to get into different types of therapy because I see that's the direction that we're going in, but I want to share two more stigmas. I think we discussed both of these. One of them is you only need Jesus, not therapy. And the other is you need a whooping.
And you still need a whooping.
Right.
Some kids do need a whooping.
Let's go to the you only need Jesus and not therapy. I know I'm very proud to see how a lot of churches have evolved to either having some type of mental health professional on staff and understanding like the role as a pastor, like in a counselor type role, but when someone in a membership really needs the next level of professional help.
Right. Working within that scope.
Anybody want to share on that? Like maybe share some ways that people who have heard this stigma or who is hearing this stigma, what are some ways that kind of create that dialogue between their church or their family? Because sometimes what I've seen in the church is like they stick to tradition because no one has helped guide them to do anything different.
Right.
Exactly.
I think one thing to keep in mind is that if somebody were to come to the church and say, my heart is hurting, I'm having chest pains, it's not a matter of, oh, just pray about it. That's a medical emergency. And so they're going to tell you to go and seek medical help. We'll pray for you while you're on your way to the hospital, but go ahead and get that help. And so we have to normalize it to where we're doing the same thing when it comes to mental health. Praying about it is good, but God also gave us the resources to work through those isures.
Absolutely.
Right. And it kind of like, I like your shirt, pray and go to therapy.
Absolutely.
That's one thing. Like, I'm also a PK. So I remember I was on this live at the beginning of the year, and the lady, she was like, what about like the same thing? What about the people that say, we just need Jesus, just pray? You know, I was saying, I was like, you know, faith without work is dead. You know what I'm saying? So we can pray, but we don't want to pray in ignorance. If God gave us these supplies, like we are the saviors to what we need. We have everything we need on this earth with us. That's why you have therapists. That's why you have doctors. That's why you have all these people. So yes, of course you pray. I'm gonna do that regardless. Before, during, afterwards, all the way. You know, God's gonna have the last final say, but He also gave us a charge on this earth to be responsible. So if there's something going on that's within our reach, physically, mentally, or our scope of practice, that's why you have other clinicians or other professionals to help out in that aspect. But it comes with education, especially when it comes to the church. If you're from a traditional church, you know, typically, like you said, Chris, you got to educate. And that's one thing that after my dad, he's a pastor, he heard the live, he was like, you know, we need this in the church. And I was like, you know what, it's because he heard the education. You know, it's not like God from our practice. And that's one thing we can say us three on here is that we talked about on the when we was going over the run through is that the best thing about my private practice is I can talk about God all day because it's to provide therapy without talking about the spirit, because I believe it has to be holistic. You can't do all these great physical attributes and your spirit isn't right, your heart isn't right, you're not doing it for certain things. So I have to when I'm working for like corporations and things like that. They say I can't talk about it, I can't. But it's very hard to separate the type of therapy I think that's very effective from a spiritual sense as well. You know, but you definitely have to kind of honor your client's wishes as well. So it's on a need by need basis. But I'm all in all that you do need Jesus, but I think Jesus also provided us and you and you know other resources to help when it's outside of our control.
Right. I mean, he even in the word, he instructs us to seek wise counsel. And so depending on the need, it's up to us to use our discernment to identify who or what wise counsel is in this case. Like when Megan said, if I'm going to get a heart transplant, I'm not going to go to the church. You know, like I'm going to a heart doctor and vice versa. So that's really important. I think the greatest thing that I've gained from therapy overall is a elevation in my relationship with religion. And what
elevation.
Like, what do I do outside of therapy? You know, like what principles am I following outside of therapy when I leave this office or when I leave this person? Who is my source? And I pray for my therapist too, because I'm praying for the person who is providing my wise counsel as well.
That's big. That's so
Therapists
big.
help you sort through those things because sometimes you have so much going on in your mind that you're you, so you're biased. You're not thinking about certain things, but once you sit down and you talk to somebody, they really are just there to help you work through it. You know, and I've noticed before I went to therapy, I thought it was gonna be this big thing of somebody just asking me all these questions that I don't want to answer. But then I realized my first few sessions, My therapist didn't say anything except.
Yeah.
And then she'll be like, "Well, how do you feel now that you finally said that?" And I'm like, "Well, you know what? I actually feel a little better that I got that out."
Right.
One of my favorite things about therapy is being able to link the past with the present. So being able to identify what happened in childhood that causes the client or causes yourself to react or respond or view the world and view other people, view yourself the way that you view them.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So we have a question. Erica is asking, how do we separate the two? So how do we separate therapy and religion? And so I guess everybody can kind of
look. They don't have to be separate.
I started doing it professionally. Good thing everything was behind closed doors, because when the Spirit told me to talk about God, I talk about God every time, and thank God I'm still here. But you have they'll teach you, training and things that if the patient opens up the conversation, you can have it comfortable. Okay, so that's a good thing. So typically, if the patient is saying on my assessment, it says, "Are you spiritual?" and I ask for religion, or I get consent, is what we call it. But if I'm dealing with the atheist and they don't want to, then basically I focus more on my expertise, my professional expertise. I talk about, CBT, coping mechanisms. I talk about very textbook things that I can feel that can be aligned. But then I also get to know your core beliefs, because a lot of times that's what's going to kind of, because even if all Christians are the same Christians, so this doesn't mean I can just go ham and go in because she's a Christian, but you have to create a therapeutic rapport with your client so you can know, okay, these are your core beliefs. So let me align this with your actions so I can understand and enter in your world. So when we aren't as relatable in a spiritual sense, I try to figure out, okay, so what are your core beliefs? Because that's what's going to drive your mindset. That's what's going to drive your action. So let me figure so I can understand. Let me figure that out, and then let me enter your world and see how I can help in that way.
And that's why finding a good match and a good fit in a therapist is like so important. Like doing your research, finding out if your therapist is actually even spiritual. Because if you go to somebody and they're not spiritual, they don't believe in God, or they're not even close to where you are, that makes a conflict in between the two of you. So like she said, it's not a one-stop shop. You might go to one therapist and they might be spiritual, but it might not be in the way that you need them to be.
Right.
So you can find another one.
And that goes with spiritual discernment too. That's why when you're on a prowl and you're looking for a therapist, ask them. I've definitely asked. I remember one of my clients, she said, "Are you of the faith?" I was like, "Of the faith." I'm telling you, before we research, "Are you of the faith?" I was like Islam, what faith? Before I say the faith I'm talking about, she's like, "Are you a believer?"
So let's talk about the different types of therapy. Also, sharing, the process. So I know a lot of therapists, especially those in private practice, do like a pre-screen and ask these type of questions to kind of help you figure out. But what are some different types of therapy?
So the first type is psychotherapy. That's what I believe me and Erica do at this point, and Deb, you're in it too. But psychotherapy is basically talking about the mind and the way doing like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, things along that line.
Yeah, and your psychotherapy would be kind of more your traditional therapy that most people are knowledgeable about. That's going to be more your talking therapy, where we know those type of standardized principles, and your couch therapist, as some people will call it. That's psychotherapy. But then you have other types of therapy, like you have. Well, for one, I'm an occupational therapist, so you can see me in broad spectrum. I can be repairing an arm, and then my specialty can also be mending hearts and mending brains and stuff. So it's also about your specialty as well. And then like you have art therapists, you have recreational therapists, you have music
therapy,
holistic.
You have equestrian.
Holistic.
What's that one?
Equestrian, like with the horses.
Yeah.
My clients do that.
That's for like people with autism. They have ABA therapists. But mostly you just want to look to see what they specialize in. Right. So, you say, this is a therapist, what do you specialize in? Because like for me, I'm an occupational therapist, but I don't specialize in couples and marriage as somebody else would. I don't specialize in, I don't I don't. I can do them, especially like grief management. I don't really do too much grief management because I know that's not my strength. Now I can,
Right.
but it's not my strength, So you ask your therapist, like, what these are your specializations? These are my problems. I think that this will be a good fit for us. Like, just be straight up, ask them in the beginning.
So I think one of the biggest things in helping find the right therapist is being honest. So I have a problem in this area. So that you don't end up at the equestrian therapy when you have
right.
You have to be, and even if you're just writing down like 3 things, I want to work on my faith, I want to work on my relationship, and I want to work on like family.
Right. And it doesn't just like that, Kristen. It doesn't even have to be in depth. Like I have anxiety when this. No, we don't get into that. Right now, let's just anxiety.
And that's one of the questions I'm going to ask once I get your call. So what is it that's bringing you to therapy so that I know, okay, this is something that I can help with, or maybe there's another professional that would be a better suit for you.
Because if not, you're doing everybody a disservice.
Right. I'm stressed out. You stressed out. We're not making any progress.
Yeah.
You ask me stuff, but
I'm going to have to refer you out anyway.
So we talked about, doing the pre-screening, helping find the right type of therapy, but now we get into the next level barriers like costs and health insurance and different things like that. Is it affordable and what's affordable? And I know some people have stopped themselves from even making that phone call because they have like this astronomical number in their head of like how much they think it's going to cost when it may not cost that much.
Right.
Anybody want to share some resources around cost, or like what's the most appropriate way to ask? I know some places have sliding scales and how that works.
Sliding scales are one, but I think before we even talk about cost, remember our tag is let's make your mental health your priority. That if you want to actually progress in life and live to your highest potential, you have to be vigilant in your mental health, especially now in times like this. So when I, as a person, that's kind of budgeting my finances, if I kind of set out a space that mental health is going to be our priority. Like if I'm spending, let's say I find a therapist who's going to give me $60 an hour. So I'm going to kind of see how can I fixate my budget to make that a priority and less of a down expense. So before you even go into access prices, go in and actually access and assess your actual financial situation. See how much where you can make room to make this a priority. Because if you go in and this is just a casualty, this is not something that's important. I can give you like a great rate, but just because it's not $20, then you're not going to make yourself priority.
Yeah.
So I think we have to kind of keep that because you'll see different numbers everywhere, like 250 to 60. But if you are looking at I only have $40 a month, then you are, then it's kind of you're not making that vigilant process and making a priority as it should be. Instead of saying let's take this $60 an hour, instead like let's say how can I cut back on these expenses that are pretty much miscellaneous, so it can't. But yeah, you're right. They do have sliding scales, and that's when they kind of base it upon your income rather than on a standard set. So like if you make between $15,000 and $20,000 a year, then it'll be this price, $30,000 to $40,000 this year. Insurance is a way. Definitely check insurance and see, because some providers take insurance. So you definitely may have copay, $25, $30 copay, $40 copay, whatever it may be. And I think for me in my practice, most important is just like I said, just be honest. Like if you come, just ask me. Like you never close mouth don't get fed is what I learned. So it's like, Erica, I see your prices are $100. I don't have it, but I need therapy. What can we do? Then we talk.
If somebody is good in choosing your insurance, for insurance that covers mental health.
That's very important.
Really great connect. Especially for us, like millennials, I know when it's time for enrollment period, I'll be so lost.
Mama, what does this mean?
I get anxiety. So much anxiety.
How much is gonna come out of my check?
That's what I want.
Sales woman, the dentist.
But that's a good time to say, because I know a lot of times people don't choose the insurance option because it's like, oh, I want to take home more money. But when you're going to a doctor or you're to the dentist or to therapy, like I'll personally share, my copay is $20.
Mm-hmm.
So the amount of money that comes out of my check every month, that covers the cost of, you know, what I'm going to therapy for. So I'll make sure that I get the most out of that experience.
Yeah.
But sit down and look at it. Like, look at it. I know it's overwhelming. A lot of companies now, they do it with you where they explain the different stuff with you. They do little sessions and stuff. But go to the benefits office, because most employers have a benefits office. I want to go to therapy this year. So, right. Which plan do I need to choose to make this option? Also, if a lot of employees offer employment assistance programs where
EAP.
EAPs, yeah.
5
or 6 free sessions. Something like that.
And then also there's like you said, there's funding within different organizations. There's funding within churches. I know for things like that, you know, you have to ask for funding. There's a lot of funding for mental health right now, grants and things like that as well. And then also what you can do is just, if you already have insurance, like Megan is my mentor when it comes to my private practice. Like, you take insurance, you turn it to the back, you call them like, hey, I'm trying to get some mental health services, trying to go to therapy. What do I have? What's my deductible? What's my copay? Call and ask, and they can send you something right there, let you know right there, you know, what you can, your deductible, and all those things that you need.
And without confusing it too much, because insurance can be confusing and stressful, make sure that your mental health coverage is through that primary insurance. For example, if you have Blue Cross Blue Shield, there may be times where Blue Cross covers your physical health or your medical and your dentist or whatever the case may be, but your mental health might be carved out to another company. And so it might be carved out to Magellan. Your therapist may not accept Magellan. So yes, your card does say that you have Blue Cross Blue Shield, but Blue Cross Blue Shield is not your mental health coverage. So that may be another question that you want to ask.
Kanae said she found her therapist and got 6 free sessions.
That's how she found. What you go through that EAP program?
I should use the EAP program.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't use the program, so the people really have a lack of work. My mom works in HR, and she was telling me about it. People just don't take advantage of it. So,
no, seriously,
what does it hurt to take advantage of it?
Somewhere. And I feel like using EAP is the perfect time to do your trial run to figure out the therapist that you like, because now you're testing out therapists. You still have to pay for you know, the test run. So
and the initial session is typically more than all of the other sessions.
Exactly. So that's the perfect. Use your free sessions to, you know, go and go. The last thing that you want to do is fall in love with a therapist you can't afford.
True. Very true.
Because they have bills too, just like we do.
That's the hardest thing, you know, that'd be the hardest thing. Like even in COVID season, like, you know, usually like, you know, sessions are typically average $100 to $125 a session. And literally during COVID season, like therapists, I know therapists along with myself kind of cut that to like 40% cash pay just because of the necessity and just because like it's so much vital now. And I think mental health is such a buzzword now because people are actually experiencing it firsthand. And it's like, this is foreign. Like, no, this is you. This is you, and you have to. This is internally who you are, and what are you actually faced to deal with. So, and it's hard, like you said, we're biased, especially if you're not trained in this profession. It's hard to actually decipher what's you, what's not you, what do you think, what way you should go, and that's why it's good to have a therapist to kind of help you facilitate through your thoughts, through your journey, you know. So,
Aquila shared a really good one. I totally forgot about this. With EAP, your sessions are based on issues. So if you say I want to go 6 times for divorce, 6 times for family, 6 times because I'm crazy on my own,
start all over.
per issue.
What the heck?
Right. And so somebody, right, if you're dealing with seniors, most Medicare Advantage plans cover mental health. So that's great.
Yes.
Into generational issues or concerns.
One thing to keep in mind when it comes to those that have Medicare as their primary insurance is you may have to search for a licensed clinical social worker. So I'm an LPC, I'm a licensed professional counselor. I cannot bill Medicare. So if you do have Medicare and you are interested in therapy, make sure that if you haven't gone through your insurance for a list of professionals that are in network, that you're looking for an LCSW or an LMSW because they're able to bill for Medicare.
Yep.
And typically now in the workplace, what I've been hearing the buzzwords and like, the mental health community is that, well, now clearly that once we are able to physically go back to work, that there has to be some type of initiation team involved in like a mental health space. Like we need to have mental health breaks. We need to have mental health.
I like that.
We need to have something in the workplace where it would allow for us to even have some type of mental health relief, especially in those high intensity areas. Like, people work 10, 8 hours, 50, 60, 80 hours a week and stuff like that, but there's no type of mental relief. So now I think what's actually been put in place in policies is that now these jobs, these corporations are going to have to incorporate mental health days, mental health actual projects, or something tangible for us in the workplace so we can say, thank you.
That's important. That is so important.
Because they're wearing us out.
What?
It is confidential. I've seen people that have kind of strayed away from it because they don't want that to be on their record, or they don't want their job to know what they're going through or mental health illness that they may be diagnosed with. But that's not anything that's going to be reported back to your supervisor or your place of business or anything like that.
You're protected. Even when you go to your therapist, that's another stigma. People, I don't want nobody to know my business. That's another thing about getting an actual qualified mental health provider is that we have to be regulated under HIPAA guidelines. So therefore, our licenses are in jeopardy. So therefore, I can almost guarantee you that what happens in this session stays in this session.
With the exception of.
This is where it really stays in this house.
Yeah, it's staying in here.
So we have about 12 minutes left, so we're doing really good on time. Time for question and answer, but I really want us to discuss people who are supporting people with mental illness, whether it's a family member, a child, a spouse. What are some tips and resources for those who are acting in a support role for someone who has a mental illness or we think may have a mental illness?
Educate yourself. It's so important to be aware of what that diagnosis comes with, what you're looking at. Again, going back to the mental health versus physical health, if that person were to have a stroke, you would find out, okay, what does this mean for them going forward? How do I need to be of support to them? Because you don't have all the facts yet, and you want to make sure that as you're supporting them, you're educating yourself along the process so you know what exactly needs to be done. If they've been diagnosed with with the stroke, they've had a stroke, you wouldn't expect them to come back into their role at 100%. You'd kind of maybe ease them back into it, or okay, they just had a stroke, so let me make sure I'm picking up A, B, and C so that they don't have to worry about it. The same goes for mental health as well. If you are a support person for them, being able to know where they're going to need that support, understand that every day is not going to be a good day. And if they've had a severe case of depression or a lot of anxiety around this season, I can't expect for you to be the same wife, to be the same mother, to be the same whatever that you were prior to going through this experience.
Yep.
Yeah. And definitely looking for resources that can help you as a person who's helping somebody else. There's so many resources, so many organizations out there, even through the state and things of that nature that are there to assist you with those type of things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And definitely kind of piggybacking off you two ladies. And then also you want to educate, number one, because you want to understand the presentation. A lot of times when you deal with someone with mental illness, you have to be able to, when I have a client, I never say this is Erica depression. You have to be able to separate that to the label doesn't define you. So understand that when
Right.
Erica is depressed, this is not normal Erica. So you can't treat me the same way or have those same expectations as normal Erica, normal, typical Erica. Okay?
Right.
So understand that when someone is mentally ill and they're manic, which that means they're in that presentation of whatever that label is, that they're going to be a totally different person, especially on the severity. So you have to have patience, because it's kind of like you're dealing with another person, especially if you have something like schizo or bipolar disorder, all those type of chemical imbalance, like those behavioral type of disorders. And then when you have depression, also understanding that these are this is how I help caregivers understand. When somebody is mentally ill, this is the only reason why when I use illness, they're ill. Okay, so it's kind of like physically ill. I'm ill. If I break my arm, and I can't expect to go play basketball tomorrow. When I'm mentally ill, it's a disability. So if I have depression and it's a disability, that means I'm not able to be happy. I'm not able to feel those voids of happiness and those emotions. As much as you think it's easy just to smile and go out and smell the roses, look, you're blessed. This is an actual illness. They're crippled. They're debilitated by this emotion. So it's going to take some time, some patience, some education. It's also going to take some skill training to get them back to the norm. So when someone is presenting outside of their typical presentation or atypically, that should be an alert. Let me be a little more patient. Let me be more understanding. Let me be more open. Let me be more giving, because this person needs this at this moment. And it's about what they need and not what we think they need.
Right. Absolutely.
Absolutely. That's it right there.
I may so hard and go to work, get off your butt, you do something. No. Figure out what that person needs, and that would be their motivator to do what they know internally they need to do to get well.
Right.
So that's the focus on them and more or less on you. And also as a caregiver, you guys have to practice self-care too. Because I've been somebody who's been debilitated physically and mentally, and it takes time. You need a rest break too. You need to make sure you have a schedule for yourself. You only can be as good to them as a provider as you are good to yourself. So when you feel defeated, take that necessary break, take that time, because it is a job caring for the
One thing that I think about when we talk about stigmas in the Black community is that when people are ill, whether it's mental or physical illness, we're ready to tell them what they should and shouldn't do. And the moment that we see them their regular self, we are avoiding the conversation. Like when that should be the time when we should be talking about, what is your rehabilitation plan? What would you like to do?
There you go.
Right.
You are experiencing this. What are some signs? What do you feel like? What are some
putting plans into place?
But we try to avoid it. It's like, oh, they're fine. They're back to normal. Like, everything's good. And then it becomes a cycle. And you see it with, like I said, you see it with physical illness and you see it with mental illness. Like, they're ill. And in most cases, they will be like this for the rest of their life because it is a part of who they are. And it will only get worse if we don't try to get them into a plan that helps them along.
And then ultimately end up becoming a trigger for them if we're not doing the service to figure out how to help them. Because, like, for example, when I was in a depressive mode, one thing, if you know me, you know that I take pride in what I look like, what I do, and all these type of things that make up me. So if you come into my room, I haven't showered, my hair's not done, I'm not motivated, that's not a sign to get me up to shake me and tell me I'm like, you tripping. Like, no, like, I want to brush my teeth. I want to look good. I want to do these things. There's a reason. There's something going on that's debilitating, that's stopping me from doing this. So I had to learn for myself, and they weren't doing this out of like malice or anything. I had to learn how to advocate for myself. So for the mental ill person that's going through an episode, when we are back to ourselves, we have to be able to initiate that conversation, because we can't always expect the caregiver to initiate that. We have to find a way to say, for one, I always have to right my wrong. Sometimes when I'm depressive, Erica, I'm not the nicest Erica. So I apologize for the way I acted in this edition. But when I am depressed, I need this and less of this. I will do this to take me here and do this. Or I just may need a little more time. So they know what to do and how to treat you to help you get back to your norm at a higher, quicker, efficient rate.
Right. That's exactly what I was going to say. Being able to ask that person, or you as the person, being able to say, this is what I need. This is how I need you to support me. Because the way that I want support and the way that you want support might be totally different. So being able to identify what that is so that I can show up for you the way that you need in that moment.
Right.
Right. I know you. I'm definitely like, I'm gritty. And I think I've come to terms with that. Like, I'm naturally gritty. Like,
Gritty. I got you.
I don't want to say rough because I think that people can tell that I'm not being rough, but it comes off like rough.
Like tough love?
Yeah, because that's how I need more to me. Like,
yeah.
Like, I people that's like, get up. And I respond to that. I don't respond to, oh, how are you? Oh, how, I don't respond to that. I'm going to be like, I don't know. Like, you have to remind yourself that everybody does not respond to what you respond to. And that's why
your person there.
Just ask, what do you need me to do? What do you want me to do? What do you want me to say? How can I help you? And self-advocacy is key in that. Care plan.
Care plan.
Work, do I need to call your job? Like, if someone comes here looking for you, what do I say to them? Because some people are like, I don't want people in my business. Y'all are telling people my business. So that's a part of the care plan. What do you want to see happen? Because while we are experiencing these things, life is still going on.
Still happening.
Yeah. And then it's also,
that was really big for me.
Yeah. It's I like to say, like, knowing your personnel too, and then also it's different, like, when you're understanding, I guess, your role in that person's life too, I guess. So sometimes, like, it looks different sometimes, and it's a spectrum too. So depression is just, I don't want to get out of bed. Sometimes depression can be high functioning. Like, it's a spectrum of things. So maybe they just need support, and support may just be enough right now. Like, let me just support compassion, because let me build them up first, because you might have some great things to say, some great ideas, but when I'm at a low point, all that seems.
I can't hear that.
So I just need support. I just need a hug. I just need you to sit in the other room. Not even in the room with me, because I don't want to see nobody, but maybe in the other room.
I need to know that you're in the other room.
Right. And you may need different things from different people. I feel like some people don't understand that. Like, when I'm depressed, I may be more willing to speak to, my mom at a given time more than another person, and not to take it personally. It's just that at this time, this is what I need. Because I've noticed that myself. Like, I can withdraw when I get depressed, and like, people take it personally, and then it just makes me feel even worse. So I'm like, letting people know it's not personal. I apologize when I get like this. This is just how it is, and how I'm gonna work through it. And when I'm out of it, I'll let you know, and then we can talk about it then. Because pressuring people to come out of what they're in, kind of like while they're in it, is like it's the worst. You just kind of like making the situation harder on them.
Yeah.
So that kind of goes into one of our first questions someone asked. Should people who are experiencing mental illness be held accountable for their up and down mood?
I'm going to say no. That would be saying that someone that has diabetes should be held accountable for when their sugar drops or when it's elevated. Yes, there may be different things that they can do to help assist in that. But that's something that we'll talk about after we get through that moment. What can we do different? What things can we put into place? If we know that such and such triggers your depressive episode, how do we, because we can't always avoid triggers. So how do we prepare ourselves to go into that? Or allergies, seasonal allergies. We know that the season is coming, so let me see which medication is going to help me this season. Because for me, it switches. Last season, it might have been Claritin. This season, I might have to rely on Zyrtec. But being able to prepare yourself, and then also knowing that sometimes it might come out of nowhere. It might not come with a warning. So I just had an allergic reaction. I don't know what happened. Help me get through this, and then after I get through it, I can kind of sort through it to figure out how I got to that point.
Right. Awareness is the form of accountability, and not like the tangible reparation.
Right.
And I think that comes with the education too. For us, it's easy to say that because we understand that like we can separate what's manic and what's normal. That's hard for the layperson to kind of discern because it's hypo. You have hypomania and you have a hypermania. So hypo can be like me being productive, me just being on it. I'm just on it. I'm feeling good. My serotonin levels are high. I'm on it. You think I'm better than I was normally. Really, I can just go all day. That's somebody that's hypo. Hyper is more of those negative, those downside emotions where you can see, oh yeah, something's wrong with him. You know. So it's hard to say, and understanding that, you know what type of control these people have when they are manic. When they are manic, they don't have a certain they only have limited control. So they're acting out within symptoms, within triggers, within reactions, within serotonin levels, within all these things. So we understand that, you know, we just need to you got to understand what part of the treatment plan is this to contain for safety? Is this just to support? Because in the hospital, if someone is manic, you don't provide therapy because it's like talking to a blank wall. You have to you have to create to safety. You have to sit there and just make sure they don't go off on nobody else because there's no point in kind of giving we're too far ahead of the scale for that. You got to wait to get regulated again. And also human error and grace too with anything, whether it's mental or anything. Yes, a person should be held accountable at the right season at the right time, but when somebody that's at a disadvantage, we have to take kind of the higher level to kind of put ourselves back and be selfless and understand the present moment. So yeah, especially when it's a family member, we can probably say like, man, he always does this when this. That may be a sign of a trigger. If he always does this happens, it's not that he's doing it on purpose. That may be a trigger.
Right.
So it's like, and it's kind of like, I believe like, you know, accountability, yes, especially when they're normal. Yeah, have that conversation with me, Erica, you were rude. And I can apologize for being that rude person. But sometimes these people act out of a reaction, a mental reaction. And
meet people where they are.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it goes back to that level because it's real. That's what people understand. Mental illness is real. He's not being rude on purpose. He's not being this horrible, depressive, or anxiety, or freaking out, or hypo person. It's because he's choosing. This is actually a reaction to a mental illness.
Right. And to kind of add a little bit to that, when it comes to bipolar disorder and hypo or hypermania, understanding that bipolar disorder comes with depressive states and manic states. And like you said, manic states might either be hypo to where they're a little bit more elevated, but hyper is like they're all the way up here. And understanding that like when it comes to medication, there's a strong stigma surrounding medication and mental illness. A lot of people don't want to take medication for various reasons, but also understanding the why behind it. So somebody that has a diagnosis of bipolar disorder, they may not want to take that medication because I feel good when I'm manic. I'm able to get things done. I'm able to get out of bed. I'm able to keep going. Whereas that medication might be bringing them down lower than what they want to be. And so when I'm lower, I just want to stay in bed and I don't want to be bothered. So understanding the why. And then on the other hand, also being able to advocate for yourself as a person with that diagnosis, communicating with your psychiatrist to let them know this medication is making me feel too low. I want to come down, but I don't want to be all the way down here. I kind of want to be at a happy medium to where I'm able to be productive, but I'm also not too depressed.
Again, self-advocacy. That answered our next question, because the next question was, do you consider someone with bipolar disorder mentally ill?
Absolutely. I don't like the word illness. Is a negative connotation on illness, but it is a mental health mental health
diagnosis
order.
Yeah.
I like to say illness, but yeah, it's a real thing. It's so real. It's scientifically it's real, biologically it's real, and for things like schizophrenia and bipolar, these type of things are a chemical imbalance within the brain and transmission of all these signals within your brain. So therefore, these people really have limited control when they're manic or when they're in an episode. So yes, it's an illness mentally. It's a disability mentally when they're manic. Now, like I said, it's different types of bipolars and there's different levels and it's different waves, different medicines you can treat. But yeah, it's definitely considered classified as under the DSM as a mental disorder. And those type of mental illness, whatever, diagnosis, I am an advocate for medicine in the severe, in the severe form, especially if you can't function. Like, and that's when I really start making medicine primary. If it help you function, if you're to the point where you can't function, where you can't take care of yourself, when you're not in your right state of mind, when you're definitely changing as a person, then that means that there may be a new type of intervention, because this is not behavior anymore, it's scientific, it's biological.
Right.
So no matter what I tell you about coping, no matter what I tell you about all these great things you should do, there's a chemical imbalance that needs to be regulated first.
Right.
Then you start.
I think that's what a lot of people don't understand about like just regular depression, like, something happens and gets you down versus, clinical depression, where, like you said, there's a chemical imbalance. And in some cases, you need that medication to stay, at an equilibrium for yourself.
Yeah, and that's what people don't understand with medicine. Like, and for one, I'm a holistic therapist. I'm gonna try to do everything before I say, all right, let's go talk to a psychiatrist about some medicine, because I believe in knowing the why. A lot of times, especially in our community, are misdiagnosed because they don't understand our why. They don't understand our aggression, our intimidation. They don't understand why we react to certain things. So therefore, we get labeled as things that's not of the standard. So before you even consider taking medicine, for one, know the facts that when you start taking these psychotropic meds, that this is a long-time commitment. Okay, this is love. In actuality, it may have to be a lifetime commitment, because therefore now you're interceding and you're messing with your chemical balance. You're messing with throwing in different type of milligrams of certain medicines to keep you regulated at a place where you can be functional. So when people start these medicines, understand that the kind of stigma for medicine, besides the side effects, once we get that controlled, is that now that I'm off of it, I feel good, let me get off, and then boom, 3 months later, we readmit, or we have things like that. And that's because you felt good because you were at the level of homeostasis. Everything you're flowing great, your levels were great. The doctor finally found you the perfect place to be. And now you feel like I shouldn't take it. But once you take yourself off, especially if you take it off cold turkey, you disrupt the process of your chemical transmission, and then slowly you start kind of digressing. So understand that if you are taking medicine, you feel like, for one, that I need to come off of it, then go to your doctor, because you have to filtrate and titrate these medicines down in order for you to get back to a level of equilibrium.
Right.
That's what I said. So before you take medicine, ask all the questions you need. Okay, doctor, what is this?
Is it temporary?
Is it temporary? Well, long term. When I feel good, can I get off of it? Ask all the questions you need to ask, and then also ask for alternate options prior to psychotropic meds, because a lot of times they're going to push these meds, especially if it's like your first occurrence. And my first depressive stage, my first manic stage, we're going to push this because, this is the quickest way, the quick fix. But you want to advocate for yourself and say, can I talk to a psychologist? Can I talk to a therapist? Can I try these type of things first within his or her guidelines before going on to these medicines? Okay. Understand, once you start these medicines, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a long-term commitment until you find a way to kind of balance off of it. That's the option.
And keep in mind that you're not going to experience an impact, I'll say, as soon as you start taking the medications, especially when it comes to something like depression or bipolar disorder. Anxiety is a little bit different, but when it comes to those medications, they have to get in your system, and you have to stay consistent with it in order for it to work. I always compare it to birth control. When you first start taking your birth control, you got to be careful. Right. And then if you miss a couple of doses, you might end up with a special package in a few months.
I had to learn that the hard way. I used to think, oh, well, I'm going to take it for X amount of time. Like you said, you start feeling good. Then I missed 2 days, and I'm just like, what's wrong? I just started saying, what's wrong with me? Something is really going on with me. Like, I don't know what it is. And then I'm like, you know what? I didn't take that medicine for 2 days. And then I get back on my routine. And after a while, I just realized, you know what? I need to take it as prescribed, just like anything else. Like you would finish off all your antibiotics, you need to do the same thing with your, depression meds.
Doctors, because there's so many different type of medications besides the novel ones that people prescribe off of just what the diagnosis is. Say like, I've heard that this one makes you do your research. Okay, I heard Zoloft does this. I heard this. Is there any other regime that doesn't make me so sleepy? Okay, I tried this dosage, but this makes me more sleepy. I'm calm, but I'm not productive. Is there a way we can kind of titrate down a little bit? Like ask these things and find a doctor you trust too, because like they're gonna tell you, friend, they're gonna help you throughout the process, because getting on psychotropic meds you'd be lucky to get the right dosage the first try.
Right.
Sometimes you got to go home. You're like, oh no, hey, you said call you if the side effects are getting worse. What can we do from here? Okay. And then someone said I end up worse after the medicine coming off. And that goes back to kind of like what's that called? What's that word called when you go cold turkey off something like
withdrawal?
Like withdrawal. You start having those of withdrawal. Because these things are chemical regulators. These are chemical stimulators. And those are like very sensory intrusive when it comes to emotions and how you feel. So once you start adding these foreign objects, medicine, it throws off your natural balance. So once you take it away, kind of like drugs, the withdrawal, when you take it away, you have those withdrawal effects and you start feeling way worse. That's why I say before you get on it, weigh your options. See if your side effects or exactly. And benzos are in half of some of the psychotropic meds too. So, you have to really weigh your options before doing this. And also, if you have medication that's working, you are one of the blessed ones that I finally found the right medical regime, keep going. I tell people in my med management classes, they're like, man, I hate taking my these medicines. Why? I was like, why? It's just like it's like embarrassing. I was like, who are you telling you taking depressive medicine to?
Right.
Right.
You feel embarrassed about doing something that makes you feel better. You don't
know.
Right.
Then also, if I'm diabetic, I'm gonna take my insulin. I know people that take it in front of them. They don't go to the restroom. This is what's keeping you alive. Physically alive, functioning at a higher level. Actually, we're on the blessed end because you have access to that. It's so many people who can't get their Medicaid regime right. The side effects is kicking their butts right now, or who don't have access to healthcare and medicine or anything like that. So don't let the stigma of the mental condition stop you from getting what you need.
Right. We have two more questions. This is a really good question because I think about this all the time. Because I love my therapist. I want the relationship. Is there a certain point in therapy where you say, okay, this is it. There's nothing else to work on this client? What does that conversation look like? And I guess that could be like a good business and a bad.
It's different for me. I think mine's been case by case. I've had some that but the thing about what I do for my practice, I recommend, but I don't require. I might recommend you come once a week, twice a week. Like usually you pick when you want to talk to me. Like I have some clients I talk to monthly, sometimes I talk to weekly, I talk to bi-weekly. I can recommend and tell you what I suggest, but a good thing about most therapists is that you drive when it comes to a form of treatment. If you want to do once a month, it's up to you. But I've also been on the therapy session when it was just quiet. Right. And I was like, and it was funny. I was like, so tell me what's going on, run it by me, what's going on. I was like, you know what? It's actually a good thing that you don't become dependent on a therapist. And that's what I like to express. I never want you to become dependent on me. I want to give you the tools you need to thrive and form a foundation for yourself. So if we reach session 6 and you're good for right now, great. Maybe we don't need to see each other once a week anymore. Let's break it down to, bi-weekly. Let's take it to monthly. Let's take it like that. But it's up to you. Because I'm not going to sit here and make up a problem. We can sit here.
That's another good conversation because it doesn't have to be a problem.
That's what I was about to say.
No problem at all.
We're breaking up. It's like, you don't need me no more.
Sometimes I'm happy to talk to my therapist about the good things that are going on in my life, not just the negative things. Like when something good happens to me, I'm like, oh, I can't wait till next week so I can tell my therapist. Like, and she's excited when I come to her with that information.
My therapist, I had one day where I pulled one of them I don't want to be here type on her, and she was like, sis, you don't have to be.
It's not a commitment.
I think a lot of people get the idea that going to therapy is like this mandated thing, like somebody's making you, which sometimes it is mandated. So in those cases, I mean, obviously, but you're not being forced to go. It's because you want to go. So
yeah,
One
that's
thing
true.
that I'll add to that,
And practice, you know, Megan was on step team, one good, one bad. Practice one good, one bad. So that way you won't always feel like, oh, I don't have anything bad to talk about, so I don't want to go. Or I don't have anything good I want to talk about. So we would end step practice with sharing the good and sharing the bad. Trying to keep a balance between like there's more work to do, but it wasn't super terrible.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
One thing that I'll add to that is that life continues to happen. And so it may not be anything drastic like a death or anything like that. It might be a conversation that you had that you want to process with your therapist, or like you guys said, it can be positive. I've had sessions over the last month that have been really good to where there wasn't anything to work on, but it was just sharing the updates. And as a therapist, I love hearing that. Like, it doesn't always have to be heavy. It feels really good to see how your clients are making progress and how they've made different steps in life.
And then also depending on your therapist, just be open. Like, that's why I love to build a very relatable clientele where you can be personable and open with me. Like, if you say, Erica, like, all right, I ain't got nothing to talk about. I'm like, like Erica, I know I probably won't see you to another month or two. Things are going well right now. I may text you or email you here and there, like, but we don't have to sit down for 60 minutes. We can do 30 minutes. We can do we can do a check-in, because the thing is, if I'm seeing you, I always tell my client, if I'm seeing you twice a week for a whole year, I don't feel like I'm doing my job. Because now you're on me.
Somebody's not doing their job. It's either me or you.
Somebody ain't doing their job. Because I'm like, look, because I'm either allowing you to depend. Well, not 2 times a week, not like that, but about the same issue with no progress and we stagnant. Let me say that. Let me say that. Because I'm like, now I'm not doing my job then. Not you. You came for me to help you. I'm not doing my job. So the thing is, I love when my clients excel and they say, Erica, or they can tell me what I'm going to say or what they should do, or tell me before you say something, this is what I think. I see the learning process. I see the validation. Just listen. I love my but just listen. Let me tell you what I did. But
and that's so exciting. That's so exciting to know that they're using it.
Like, Erica, the goal was to not go off on 4 people at work. Open up on 2. And then I'm like,
that's progress, baby. That's progress.
It's okay to take a break. I definitely don't see my therapist on a routine schedule. It's probably been a little bit more because of COVID, because we ain't got nothing to do with talk. And there's also like a mentor too, so I'm learning from her in the therapy sense. But yeah, you definitely want to build that connection where you can tell your therapist, like, this has been great, so great that I might not even get to see you for 2 more months.
I'm definitely a hard to say goodbye to good people type person.
It's not goodbye.
See you later. It's see you later.
Kristen, I can relate to that because when my therapist told me, okay, well, maybe we can step back to every other week, I was like, she just broke up with me. Like, what you mean every other week, sis?
But no, but it's always a see you later. And the thing is, you like I said, you're the driver in therapy. Like, if a therapist is making you feel bad because you're not coming as frequent as he wants you to come, then somebody took control of the driver's seat. We can always recommend. We can recommend. And it's crazy, on my OT medical side, when I do home health, I have to do like 3 times a week for 6 weeks. So it's crazy on this side. I love it because it increases the value and quality of the sessions, because now you want it. You want more than I wanted, because I know I'm all in it, but it's so great to know that like you want it. Like, you book this every once a week, twice a week, a week, a month. You want it, you need it. So.
And that doesn't mean that just because you don't have another session for another week and a half that you can't call your therapist. I mean, we could have a session today and life might hit you hard on Friday and you're like, okay, I need to call my therapist and see if I can get a sooner appointment.
So we have one last question. I want to share this just in case we have anybody that's experiencing a crisis. We do have some resources from AFSP.org, and they are sharing a lot of information around Minority Mental Health Awareness Month as well. But you can text talk to 741-741. It's that simple, and get some help today if you are experiencing a crisis. We're on the end on a high note, so I'm glad that we kind of got to this part of the conversation. And our last question is, any advice for someone new to prioritizing their mental health and considering therapy for the first time? So I think each of us can answer this and share our experiences and in there. This is really good. Anybody can go first.
Go ahead, Erica.
I said 1, 2, 3, not me. Y'all see, y'all didn't say that.
Oh, I thought you said you wanted to go.
I go first because it's crazy, because it's actually right on time for my practice. My whole motto is let's make your mental health priority. So basically, that is exactly what it is in itself, making it priority. Whatever you think about, what you prioritize now in your life over above everything, you know. So now you want to find a way where you can insert the slot for mental health. Now, the reason that the way you do this, you have to figure out your why. Your why is important. Why should I even be prioritizing my mental health? And once you really get to the depths of what mental health is you can realize that some of your barriers can lead to those things related to the disadvantage of your mental health situation right now. And some of those things could be childhood trauma. Some of those things could be experience, life experience, lack of resources. It could be a whole lot of things that's creating a barrier towards you reaching your highest potential. A lot of times that we've taught in society to move with our physical. Be strong, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. And then in life, sometimes we realize we have all these accolades and we're doing everything, but we're still empty. And that's because we neglected ourselves. So I think we're at an age right now, especially in my age group with my launches and stuff, is like, now I'm not just moving purely on my physical attributes or what I'm good at or my strengths or my talents, because it's not fulfilling me in the sense where I need to be fulfilled as a whole. So when you understand that when you work on your mental health, you're directly correlating with working on being a better person to have a better life and a better reality and a better destiny and better goals. And you're actually setting yourself up for success. So typically that's what's missing in the piece. When I have therapy, the client usually comes to me with a lot of external factors. He did this relationship, this situation, this job. But typically before we even get to the external, I have to talk about what's going on internal, because that's going to be a direct reflection of your outward experiences. Not saying that you're the blame for things going on, but that's probably how you interpret or your perspective of what's going on and what's stopping you. So mental health has to be priority, and especially in lieu of COVID, what's going on now, you have to be vigilant in your mental state in order to be productive outwardly. And if you're considering therapy for the first time, I think that is great. I think it's definitely a low risk type of bet on yourself, because for one, like I said, you are in the driver's seat. If you didn't know, now when it comes to therapy, you find exactly who you want, who you need at that moment, at that time. Ask the questions you need, and also understand on your first session, one, it's not a commitment. If you don't like them, thank them for their service and keep going until you find what works for you. And then also understand that if it's your first time, it's going to be foreign. So it's going to seem weird talking about your emotions, telling somebody, a stranger, your emotions, but give it time. Give it a session or two. And then if you don't start to see yourself finding that connection with the therapist, then, like I said, you can keep shopping around until you find that fit for you.
That's really good. I love
she summed it up.
Anybody else want to share?
I'll go.
Okay.
So I've noticed lately, like a lot of people have come to me just saying, I realize that, I may need a therapist and I need to go. And I think that's really just the first step in acknowledging that you need the help and that you want the help, and then going after and trying to find, a therapist that works for you. I feel like that's the biggest part of actually seeking therapy. And then as far as prioritizing it, just like you prioritize everything else, people have budgets, they have goals, you write those things down, you track them. Do the same thing with your mental health, in therapy. Set goals for yourself. Like, where do you want to be? So maybe today I realized I need therapy. Next week, I'm going to actually, look up some therapists and see about it. And the next week, I'm going to do this. It doesn't have to be an overnight venture, because I know a lot of people think like, oh, I'm going to call a therapist and the next day I'm going to go sit down and then instantly all my problems are going to be solved. It definitely doesn't work like that. Mental health is a journey. Now, I like to call it that because
Yes.
it's gonna go up, down, whichever way.
All
Because
around.
like Megan said, life is still happening while you're going to therapy. So you may even start doing really great, but something can come along and happen and throw you off track. So just prioritizing it the same way that you would prioritize any other thing in your life, and then just giving yourself the time. Like if it feels a bit overwhelming for you to, think about going to a therapist next week, set the goal. Okay, maybe next month. That's when I'm gonna go to my initial appointment.
Mm-hmm.
So just taking that first step would be what I would say as far as prioritizing and going to therapy for the first time.
I agree.
I would start off by saying, for one, I applaud you for taking that step because I understand how difficult or how scary it might be to take that step and focus inward. So, congratulations on making that step. As far as prioritizing your mental health, something that I've been doing with my clients is instead of asking, well, how are you today? Because the common response is, I'm good, I'm fine, I'm okay. But that doesn't have any depth to it. I've started by asking, what color describes how you're feeling today? So ask yourself that same question every morning, every day at lunch, every night before you go to bed. How am I feeling? What color would describe how I'm feeling? And once you get that answer, respond to that answer. So if you're not great, if you're feeling blue and your blue, because my blue and your blue might be different. So your blue is that you're feeling down. Okay, as a result, I'm going to prioritize my mental health and do what I need to do to change that color from a blue to a yellow or whatever the case may be. And as far as someone that's considering therapy for the first time, I would stop and identify what factors are important for me in a therapist. Do I want a therapist that looks like me? Do I want a female therapist? What are some qualities that I'm looking for in them? Like Kristen said, she's one that needs you to be on her. You might want someone that might be a little bit softer, whatever the case may be, being able to identify that. And you might not identify it first off, like offhand. Like Erica said, it may take some time where you sit down with a couple of people and you're like, you know what? I didn't really like that characteristic. Let me look for something else. But being able to identify what you're looking for in a therapist.
And I think for me, this is the pray step, okay? This is now I need to pray because like everyone has shared, like any relationship, you don't know what you need until you don't have it.
Right.
So I'm praying for discernment. Like, let God reveal to me areas where I may need to work on myself or things that I may need to start looking for. Write them down as you prioritize. So I'm just kind of going in order for some of the things that they shared. You prioritize the financial space for it. You prioritize the time for it. What can you do in the time being? So if finances is a barrier for you at the moment, what can I do as a therapeutic method that is free? Just for now, whether it's listening to a podcast, joining conversations like this, reading a book, praying, listening to music, dancing. So that way you can start to say like, that made me feel good. And now you are empowered to go on to the next step. If finances is a barrier, looking at your budget, cutting back on some expenses, starting to look at resources that will allow you to get into therapy. There's apps like Talkspace and the Hive app, the Calm app, like all these different things that can kind of fill that space, understanding that these are temporary. These things are designed to empower me to keep going and join a community of people who are experiencing what you are experiencing. The best thing about social media is that it connects you with people, especially on Facebook. Like I'm sure you can type in like grief for dog group and find it. You don't have to go in there and just say like, hey, I'm here because my dog died. Listen to some of the things that they're sharing, listen to their experiences, listen to some of their triggers that you may realize are also a trigger for you. You need to get around people that make you feel okay, because that's the biggest piece that will really help you get to the next step is knowing that, hey, I'm doing something good for myself. I have the support that I need and I'm ready. This is your first time in therapy, but it won't be your last, because as everybody shared, and I'm a super planner, so sometimes I get like hypersensitive to like the future. I'm thinking about who's gonna be my therapist when I have this baby. Like, so knowing that, I may be able to get through this season by myself. I did it, But what about next season? Or what about things that are beyond your control? Things that will happen that we aren't prepared for because we just don't know. Like COVID, who expected like this to happen? In the beginning, I was shook. I was like, okay, world stop. Somebody called say or something.
Nobody said carry on.
Nobody said carry
on.
Knowing that for me, I already had a support system in place because I had already started therapy. So you have that space. So I think it's really outlining your priorities, creating a care plan for yourself, even if you don't have an illness. What do I need? What type of people do I need? What type of support do I need? What type of finances do I need? I need to be able to afford therapy. I have never thought about that and picking a job, but the next job that I go to, therapy come with that, advocate. You have to practice becoming a self-advocate because it will translate not only in your mental health, your family members' mental health,
It'll inspire somebody else.
Exactly.
Right.
Be okay with being, transparent to the level that you would like to be. But I think that transparency allows us to just relinquish some of the weight.
Right.
I'm going to therapy. It feels great. Even if you just write it down on a piece of paper, somebody heard it. I'm telling you, they said, write it down, write the vision and make it.
Write the vision, make it plain. Yeah.
Read, run. So somebody heard it. Like Megan said, we applaud you for deciding to take this step. And we applaud everybody who joined us tonight because this was the step, making the time to be a part of this conversation, whether live or after in the rewatch, that's a step. So I want to applaud everybody and allow you to give yourself the grace and accomplishment for doing this as well.
Yep.
And thank you, Kristen, for creating this platform.
Yes.
All right, thank you, Coco.
Give yourself a pat on the back.
Literally, like we breaking generational curses.
Absolutely.
It
starts here.
You know what I changed it to?
What?
Vernacular. I don't say breaking generational curses. I said bridging the gap. Because I think we learn from each generation. We got to reach back. We got to teach one. Because those were good. And I have to learn that when I talk to older people because they think that when you come with this different type of knowledge, it's like you're straying away from the foundation and teachings. It's like, no, I'm actually now, you guys allotted this information and now I'm in the information and resource era now. I'm using what you guys gave to actually keep uplifting and keep growing. So I feel like there's definitely some valuable things you can learn from the generations before, but then we have to do like we do in our life. What worked, what didn't work. Okay, now this is what I'm 30 now, and I'm dealing with these problems now because of what happened when I was a child in the house. So I know when I go to my family, I'm gonna be more open in the household. It's gonna be more communication. It's gonna be more family. It's gonna be more love and all those type of things. So it's like, yeah, we bridging those gaps and we decide to make it stronger, make it longer, make it wide.
Right. Okay, so I'm just sharing all of the comments, all the feedback. Everybody enjoyed it, so we really appreciate you guys for participating. All of the feedback, we appreciate it, and I hope to see you guys next month. Next month's conversation, and we kind of got to next month's topic because now we need to have a conversation around what mental health support looks like for our babies as they go back to school during. So I hope to see you all back here next month. Follow Coco Wells. We will definitely share more information about all of the upcoming events and other ways that we can continue to support your journey around health education and wellness in your life, in your family member's life, your friend's life, your sister, cousin, auntie, daddy, brother, life, everybody. So without further ado, we're gonna call it a night.
Thank you, Kristen.
Bye. Be safe.
I guess that's it.